SAMBA TV releases their final numbers for the Ahsoka season finale, and Disney releases internal numbers for the premiere of Loki Season 2, which dropped about 2 days after that Ahsoka finale. And wouldn't you know it, neither one of those figures are exactly something to celebrate. Let's talk about it.
Renegade Online.
Well, folks, welcome back. Another great day here at Valiant Renegade. It's good to see everybody out there once again. And if you are like one of the many folks watching this video, not yet subscribed to this channel, please take a moment and turn that little red subscribe button to gray. Hit that like button, hit that notification bell, share this sucker out on the social medias, and of course, please do leave a comment before you head out the door today. Join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern right here for the live show. Let's set this up properly by going back to the beginning. Back on August 28th, SAMBA TV released they had measured 1.2 million U.S. households tuning in for the series premiere of Ahsoka. By comparison, the very next day, they released that 1.1 million U.S. households tuned in to watch The Flash on the first 3 days of its release. That Ahsoka figure was for the first 6 days. And also to compare, within the next several days, we had a 1.2 million household measurement for Who is Aaron Carter, a basic random run-of-the-mill Netflix show. Or how about 1.3 million views for Virgin River over its first 4 days on Netflix? Again, not 6 or 5, but only 4. We got 1.3 million U.S. households tuning in for the first episode of Special Ops Lioness. 1.3 million for a very much unheard of Paramount Plus show. And now, for the season finale of Ahsoka, SAMBA measured 863,000 U.S. households over the first 6 days. Yep, just as we predicted, the audience was declining. And we did a video last week where I created a custom spreadsheet to try to predict the next several weeks of Nielsen releases. We'll get the fourth week, or episode 5 of Ahsoka, sometime on Thursday, and every Thursday after that until we reach the final episode. But I think, based on these SAMBA TV numbers, we're going to come in pretty close. What this means is from Ahsoka's first episode, where SAMBA measured 1.2 million households, to the final episode about 7 weeks later with 863,000 episodes, Ahsoka lost about 30% of an already anemic audience to begin, an audience, to remind folks, that was no bigger than Andor about a year ago, at least insofar as what SAMBA TV measured. Now again, that's not the definitive household count, but as I continuously remind folks, looking at SAMBA TV numbers to compare to other SAMBA TV numbers in terms of relative scale is a valuable tool. And as we mentioned in last week's video with the Nielsen reports, having that kind of number, or even a 1.2 million premiere number, when you juxtapose that with, say, House of the Dragon, which SAMBA measured somewhere around 4.8 million U.S. households, or 4 times that of Ahsoka, two shows that have relatively similar budgets per episode, that's a big problem for Disney, and this is why shows like this are untenable financially for the long term. Disney cannot continue to spend the amount of money that they are spending for an increasingly shrinking audience. But let's look at SAMBA's comments on that image a little bit closer. The finale of Ahsoka landed on Disney Plus last week to 863,000 U.S. households watching. Older millennials tuned in at the highest rate to watch, whether Thrawn made it off Peridia. Older millennials tuned in at the highest rate. That should have some alarm bells going off. Those older millennials that they're referring to are the ones that grew up with the prequel trilogies. Guys like me, the Gen Xers, were still into the prequels when they came out, but we were largely in our 20s at that point. Our experience growing up was far more closely tied to George Lucas's original trilogy, as well as the merchandise purchases that we made by the billions. But the problem is that where's all the younger demographic? Disney doesn't seem to be pulling them in. That means their audience is not only shrinking, but seems to be aging out. The true power and wealth of Star Wars always lay in the fact that it would continue to cross generational lines. You had everybody back from older Americans at that point that were born during the Great Depression to the baby boomers to the Gen Xers, and yes, even the millennials got into Star Wars, which drove them towards the prequels, although they weren't really adults yet. But now if we're to believe SAMBA TV's measurement system here, then that means that the generations behind the millennials, those in maybe Gen Z, well, they're not showing up. And if that's true, that means that Disney has broken the chain of Star Wars from generation to generation. But even with that, where are the Gen Xers? They're obviously not watching this show. They're the ones like me and so many others in my generation that feel like Disney has just abandoned us altogether. There's nothing out there from Disney Star Wars that's appealing to us. And we're the generation that made Star Wars the biggest multi-billion-dollar intellectual property that ever was. And again, I will reiterate, after the confirmation here from SAMBA TV, there is no good path forward for this Mandoverse, or this Filoni-verse, if you want to call it that, to culminate in a very expensive $400 million production cost for a cinematic release. This is just not something Disney can afford to do with this, short of them wanting to be publicly humiliated at the box office yet again. And for the people out there whining about my last video saying that I was hating on Dave Filoni, no, we showed you the numbers. This is not about whether you liked this show or not. This is simply a matter of fact that there is nowhere near a big enough and energized enough audience to warrant such a capital expenditure for a $400 million production and marketing cost. In fact, the number of reasons to continue to even do these Disney Plus shows at this pace and scale are shrinking by the second. But hey, don't worry, Loki Season 2 premiered just 2 days after Ahsoka, and, well, whoops, 10.9 million views after 3 days. That's a global figure. Disney previously reported that the Ahsoka premiere had garnered 14 million global views in its opening week, and that was only for the first episode, not the second episode, which also dropped concurrently. But that was over 6 days. Over 3 days, they're calculating Loki did 10.9 million views globally. Now, giving it a little bit of deference, it certainly could have racked up another couple of 2 or 3 million views in those back 3 days, days 4, 5, and 6, that they didn't measure for this. And maybe it just slightly outpaced Ahsoka, or got very close to it, or maybe even underperformed it a little bit. Of course, Disney is deliberately trying to obfuscate this data so that we can't really tell. The problem is that Loki Season 1 was a pretty big show. In fact, it was second only to the first 2 seasons of Mandalorian when it came to the Nielsen ratings. But given what we're seeing here, and knowing what we already know about Ahsoka, it seems like Loki Season 2 is taking a sharp nosedive from the first. And we've previously covered how people like Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney, have come out on several occasions and hinted at the fact that going forward, not only will the number of productions for Disney Plus, big tentpole pieces like Marvel, and you can throw Star Wars in there down the road as well, not only will they be pulled back in sheer number, but the actual budgets that they allocate to these shows are going to be cut back as well. They have to. The viewership is simply not justifying this. The proof of how poorly these shows are doing compared to Disney's expectation is in Bob Iger's statement itself, meaning that if Bob Iger and Disney were thrilled with the performances of these shows on Disney Plus, they would not be cutting back the number of shows. They would not be pulling back on the budgets for future greenlit projects. If anything, they would be throwing more money at these two IPs. They would be pushing more content out, but they're not. They're going the other way. That should tell you every single thing that you need to know about what the facts on the ground at the Walt Disney Company are right now. Now, as I mentioned, on Thursday, we will get the next round of Nielsen numbers, and we will go back to the chart that I built last week and update it with projections for episodes 6, 7, and 8. We will update those projections. I have a feeling we're going to be bringing them down as I expected last week. I guided forward that the numbers that I had put on there were if it held after episode 4, which again is where Anakin Skywalker returned in Ahsoka, that little cameo at the end. And there was a lot of thought out there how that would jumpstart the series and really give it a big boost going into the finale. Well, according to SAMBA, That didn't happen. Not only did it not happen, but even more people left. Disney cannot continue to cater Star Wars to an ever-shrinking audience on naught but member berries and Easter eggs in each and every episode. There has to be some substance there. And one of the biggest complaints about Ahsoka has been that, well, it lacked substance of any kind. And again, I understand that a lot of people enjoyed the show, but there's simply not enough of you out there to warrant this to continue. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think we should try to see more out of this Disney brand of Star Wars or less? Do you think it's actually still going to be financially tenable going forward if this type of trend continues? And the same question is for Marvel. What are your thoughts on Loki so far, if you're even watching it? Doesn't seem like that many people are, but if you are you going to stick around till the season finale, or have you already checked out after just the first couple episodes? Thanks for joining us. See you next time, and take care.
Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.